It was an eerie fall evening when he decided to take a quiet drive through Beechwood Lane, a rural road that ran through a secluded forest outside the town. Normally, he would never drive this late at night, but something about the crisp, autumn air made me crave the solitude of the winding road. The trees, towering like dark sentinels on either side, whispered with the wind, their branches twisted into unnatural shapes, resembling skeletal hands clawing at the sky. A heavy fog rolled in, thick and suffocating, swallowing everything in sight. Beechwood Lane was already isolated enough, but tonight felt different, colder somehow, as though something unseen was lurking just beyond the mist. I pressed my foot gently on the gas pedal, the low hum of the engine mingling with the eerie silence around me. I knew this road well, I'd driven it countless times, but tonight, it felt like the forest was alive, watching me with unseen eyes. Goosebumps pricked along my arms as I tried to shake the feeling off. Maybe it was just the fog, messing with my mind. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I couldn't get rid of the creeping sense of unease that tightened around my chest. I glanced in the rearview mirror, not expecting much other than the fading view of the road behind me. That's when I saw it. A red Jeep. At first, it was a small dot of light, but it quickly grew larger as it closed the distance between us. The headlights cut through the fog like a knife, unnervingly close. My heart raced. I told myself it was just a coincidence, just someone else driving through the same stretch of road, but the way the Jeep seemed to tell me, not slowing down, unnerved me. I pressed my foot a little harder on the gas, but the Jeep kept passing. As the Jeep pulled up beside me, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I dared to glance over, and that's when I saw him. The driver, a man, was staring straight at me through the window. His eyes were dark, hollow, like empty voids. There was something unnatural about them. His face was pale, almost sickly, with dark shadows hanging under his eyes, giving him a sinister, haunting appearance. His expression was unreadable, but there was a chill in the air that made my skin prickle with unease. But it wasn't just him. There was someone else in the Jeep. My gaze shifted, and I caught sight of her. A woman, bound in the back seat, her hands tied tightly behind her. She struggled, her face pale with terror. She looked like she was trying to scream, but no sound came out. She banged against the window, her eyes wide with panic, pleading for help. My stomach twisted into knots. I could feel my pulse kicking. What was going on? Why was she tied up in there? What did this man want? Instinct screamed at me to act, but before I could grab my phone to dial 911, the Jeep surged forward, cutting through the fog and leaving me in a cloud of mist. My breath caught in my throat. I knew I couldn't just let this go. This woman, she was in danger. I had to do something. Without thinking, I slammed my foot down on the accelerator and followed the Jeep. The fog thickened even more, and the road seemed to twist and turn more sharply with each passing second. The Jeep swerved between the lanes in a wild, erratic pattern, clearly trying to shake me off. I was losing ground, but I couldn't lose sight of it. I had to help her. The air was growing colder by the minute, the fog so dense that it felt like I was driving through a ghostly tunnel. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had to get closer. I had to find out what was happening. Then, in the distance, through the mist, I saw something. An old house, abandoned and decaying, standing like a forgotten relic of the past. The Jeep made a sharp turn toward it, and I didn't hesitate for a second. I followed, my heart hammering in my chest as I pulled into the driveway behind the Jeep. The house long before me, its windows broken, the door hanging loosely off its hinges, the kind of place that seemed to have been left to rot for decades. This was it. The jeep had stopped here. But what did that mean? I couldn't explain it, but he had to know. He parked the car as quietly as he could, hoping to remain unseen. The man was standing by the jeep now, his back turned toward me, staring into the woods. He wasn't looking my way. I seized the opportunity, quickly opening the door and darting out of the car. My breath was shallow, my pulse pounding in my ears. I couldn't let fear stop me. The woman needed help. She had to. He ran to the back of the jeep, hands trembling as he pulled the door open. My heart sank. The back seat was empty. She was gone. I felt a cold knot of dread coil in my stomach. Where had she gone? What happened to her? The silence around me was deafening, and I stood frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of it. Then, I heard it, a faint, dragging sound from the woods. My head snapped toward the sound, my heart racing. And there, emerging from the thick fog, was something I couldn't believe. A figure, tall and impassably thin, with limbs that twisted and stretched at unnatural angles. The face, if it could even be called that, was smooth, featureless, a blank, faceless mask staring straight at me. The shadow of it moved like smoke, shifting and contorting as it took slow, deliberate steps toward me. The figure was massive, taller than any man should be, and with every step it took, I felt the air grow colder, heavier. The dragging sound continued, closer now. A scream caught in my throat, but it wouldn't come out. My limbs froze, my body paralyzed with fear. Slenderman. I recognized him immediately, even if he didn't want to. The stories, the rumors, they were all true. I had heard about the creature, how it lurked in the woods, how it took people, but I never believed it. Not until now. I backed away, my legs shaking as I struggled to move. The figure's long, twisted arms stretched out toward me, and I could feel its presence closing in on me, suffocating me. I could barely breathe as the fog thickened, enveloping everything, until all I could see was the tall figure moving ever closer, its faceless mask staring straight at me. And then, through the thick ball of fog, I saw her. The woman. Her eyes were wide, filled with terror, as she was dragged into the woods. Her body jerked with each step she was forced to take, her hands bound, her cries silent but desperate. Slenderman's shadow swallowed her whole, and then there was nothing left but the fog, the cold, and the terrible silence. I could do nothing. I was frozen in place, unable to move, unable to scream. Slenderman's shadow enveloped both of us, and I knew, deep in my bones, that I would never leave Beechwood Lane. It was a quiet weekend getaway when Angela and her two friends, Sarah and Ben, decided to visit a remote cabin in the heart of the Appalachians. We were all eager to escape the bustling city, wanting a break from the relentless noise and pressure. The plan was simple: enjoy a peaceful hike, reconnect with nature, and live beyond the chaos of our everyday lives. Little did we know, our little vacation would turn into something far darker. We arrived at the cabin just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky bleeding into purples and reds. The air was thick with the earthy scent of pine and wet soil, and the chirping of crickets filled the silence. The cabin itself was small, rustic, and charming, nestled deep within the woods. After settling in, we began to prepare dinner, some pasta and salad, while joking and laughing, trying to make the most of the remote isolation. The night was still young when the clock struck midnight, and we, in our youthful enthusiasm, decided to take a night hike along a trail that snagged into the forest. A part of me wondered if it was too late, but I pushed the feeling away, thinking that we were fine, that we were safe. The forest was eerily silent as we hiked deeper into the woods. The night air was crisp, and our footsteps seemed too loud in the vast emptiness. Only the occasional hoot of an owl disturbed the stillness. We spoke in hushed tones, careful not to break the quiet. We wanted to savor the peacefulness. But as we moved further, the hairs on the back of my neck began to prickle. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something felt off. The trees, looming above us, seemed like silent watchers in the dark. I glanced over at Sarah, then Ben, but neither of them seemed to notice anything unusual. Perhaps he was just being paranoid. That's when we saw it, a pair of headlights cutting through the trees in the distance. At first, we assumed it was another hiker or perhaps a park ranger, but the truck was moving too fast, too recklessly. It was like it was intentionally trying to avoid us, speeding past at a pace that seemed almost urgent. My heart began to race as the black pickup truck tore through the trail, nearly clipping our legs before it slowed down. It came to a complete stop, the engine roaring as it idled in place. A sickly feeling curled in my stomach. Why was it just sitting there, like it was waiting for something? Or someone? For a moment, there was no sound, just the heavy breathing of the three of us. Then, suddenly, the truck's headlights flickered off, and we were plunged into complete darkness. I froze, my pulse thumping in my ears. It felt like the night itself had swallowed us whole. Ben, always the curious one, didn't hesitate. "Let's check it out," he said, his voice full of bravado. He was already walking toward the truck before any of us could say a word. I hesitated, instinctively feeling the pull of something dark, but Sarah followed Ben without question. I was the last to move, dread pulling in my stomach. But we kept walking, driven by some strange, irrational need to know what was going on. As we got closer, I saw it, the glow of a lantern casting light on three figures standing around the truck. At first, I thought it was a trick of the shadows, but no, these were people, standing motionless, their faces obscured by grotesque masks. The masks looked like something out of a nightmare, disturbing, twisted, and devoid of any humanity. Their eyes glinted in the dark, bright and malevolent, and my breath hitched in my throat. They were watching us, waiting. Before any of us could react, one of the figures stepped forward, pointing directly at me. His voice was cold, like he's scraping against metal. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his words last with an eerie calmness. My heart dropped into my stomach. His words felt like a warning, a threat that we couldn't ignore. The moment he registered what he said, the truck roared back to life, its engine a deafening growl. The truck sped off with terrifying speed, disappearing into the forest as quickly as it had appeared. We stood there for a long moment, staring into the dark, the echoes of the engine fading into nothingness. Then, without another word, we turned and ran. The fear that had been creeping in suddenly became overwhelming, and we dashed back toward the cabin, our feet pounding the trail. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, but the unsettling sense of dread didn't fade. It clung to me, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. We reached the cabin, locked all the doors and windows, and tried to calm ourselves. We sat in silence, the three of us listening to the faint sounds of the forest outside. The wind rustled the leaves, and I could have sworn I heard something, no, someone, moving around in the trees. But I told myself it was just the wind. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. It felt like time had distorted itself, stretching on endlessly. We had all settled into an uneasy silence, trying to push the disturbing encounter from our minds. But then, there was a sound, a loud bang, coming from the front door. I jumped up, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound came again, a rapid knock, like someone, or something, was pounding on the door. And then I saw them. The masked figures. They stood there on the porch, their eyes gleaming in the darkness, staring at us through the window with an intensity that made my blood run cold. One of them raised his hand and gestured toward the goods behind them. My stomach churned. It was like they were inviting us to follow. I don't know why, but I looked. And that's when I saw it, moving from the trees, from the darkness beyond the porch. Tall, thin, and impossibly long limbs that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural angles. A silhouette that was more shadow than form. The Slenderman. I had heard of him before, in stories and urban legends, but seeing him with my own eyes was something else entirely. His face, if you could even call it that, was featureless, used a pale, smooth surface that seemed to reflect the night. And then, as if the nightmare wasn't already complete, the masked figures stepped aside, and the forest seemed to open up, revealing even more twisted shadows emerging from the trees. The Slenderman wasn't alone. We had no choice but to run. I grabbed the nearest thing, a metal flashlight, and swung it at the window, shattering the glass with a sickening crash. I didn't wait for the others. I ran, with Sarah and Ben right behind me. We didn't look back, not even once, as the Slenderman's towering form loomed just behind us, his long arms reaching out, his presence suffocating. We ran for what felt like hours, our legs burning, our breaths frigid. We didn't stop until we were miles away from the cabin. But even then, we couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, following us through the woods. The truck, the masked figures, the Slenderman, they had found us, and they weren't going to let us go that easily. We never spoke of that night again. The terror of it lingered in the back of our minds, too heavy, too oppressive to discuss. But every once in a while, in the quietest of moments, we'd hear it. The faint sound of an engine, far off in the distance, and the sickly glow of headlights cutting through the darkness, chasing us once again. The nightmare had only just begun.